Hello YouTube, this is Neon. The title of my talk today is going to be Maury Travis. Maury Travis was an African American serial killer who killed African American women in the St. Louis, Missouri, Illinois area. Before I go into him, I have a few quick disclaimers. So the first one is that the lion's share of serial killers are white men. It just so happens that the ones that I tend to find most fascinating are serial killers of color and women, even though they're actually rare, particularly women. They represent, African Americans and women represent a disproportionately small percentage of serial killers. Okay, so I don't want to give off the wrong impression. I just happen to find them so fascinating. Or more fascinating, let's say. So, if you want to get more facts about Maury Travis, you can look for him on YouTube and find a documentary. When I do these talks on serial killers, it's not so much about trying to give all of the facts about them in a video of 10 minutes, but rather some of the facts, but my impressions, my emotional reactions, as well as my comparisons to them amongst serial killers, being that I've watched hundreds of documentaries and read about many serial killers. And so what makes them stand out? That's what my talk's about. And then, of course, you're smart, so you know this already, but I'm not a fan of serial killers the same way I'm a fan of Gandhi or Tracy Chapman or Michael Jackson, right? I am fascinated by them, but I'm also horrified by them. Back to Maury Travis. The things that make the facts surrounding the murders that were committed by Maury Travis that make him stand out, any one of these facts, although they are uncommon, you will find a handful of serial killers that at least one of these facts applies to. However, he's the only serial killer that all of these facts apply to that I've come across. And they are: one, he committed suicide shortly after being caught. Two, he video recorded 2 of his murders so that he could pleasure himself after watching them, while watching them. 3, he got himself caught because ultimately he was pursuing fame. That's 4. 5, he was a prolific serial killer. And prolific serial killers, once they've gotten past a certain number of killings, whatever that number is, it could be 5, 10, 15, who knows, the killings themselves are less satisfying. It's less of a thrill, it's less of a rush, it's less sadomasochistic pleasure, and so they pursue fame. He became prolific. He bragged of killing 17, but they believe, investigators, professionals believe, he may have killed 20, perhaps more women. And this man had a torture chamber, which is pretty horrifying. There was a woman who, well, for starters, it had become known that there was a serial killer killing these women. These were African American women who worked in the sex trade industry, who were sex workers. There were some people who believed that they weren't finding the murderer of these precious angels because they were black women who were not valued, and they were sex workers who were doubly not valued. That may or may not have played a role, but the reality is that, unfortunately, many of these precious women, their bodies were found in advanced stages of decay, and there was no DNA evidence, there was nothing. So they didn't know who was committing these murders. He being a journalist from a local newspaper, and I'm not sure if it was to St. Louis, Missouri. If it was a St. Louis, Missouri newspaper, but a newspaper that was covering these stories. They decided to cover a story, do a profile on Teresa Williams, which is one of the women that he murdered. Teresa Wilson. Again, one of the women that he murdered, because she was loved. Unlike a lot of women who sell their bodies for sex, many times their family doesn't care about them, their family has lost touch with them, they have nobody. And then of course society does not value them. Men pay to sleep with them, but people don't value them. In this case, this lady's mother was looking after her children. She had 2 young children. She was loved, she was missed, her mother wanted to know what happened to her, as far as who had murdered her. And when Maury Travis saw this, he got angry. He's like, why are you doing a profile on her? She doesn't matter, her life didn't matter, she's nothing. And I'm going to let you know, I killed this woman. This is what he wrote in a letter to this newspaper journalist. I want to let you know that I killed her, she doesn't matter, and so you know that I'm not playing with you. I've included a map with this letter, and I'm putting an X where you're going to find a body that wasn't discovered yet. And that's body number 17. Incredible. They were able to go sort of backwards and find out the website that the map was printed on. And going through the website, they were able to find what computer, and there was only one, that had actually printed a map of that area. So they were able to trace it back to his computer. This was pretty historic at the time. This was in 2002, and this kind of investigative work through computers online was really fairly uncommon 16 years ago, 15, 16 years ago. This man was a megalomaniac. This man had a God complex. This man was evil. He didn't ever think he was going to get caught. When he did get caught, he was smug and thought that he was perhaps going to be in jail for a day and he'd get out and they'd never prove anything. And the reality set in once he was in jail that they were going to search his home. They were going to find the videos of 2 of the women he had videoed himself murdering, and that his ass was grass, right? He was never going to see the light of day. In one documentary, they suggest that he didn't want his mother. It was her home that he was living in with his girlfriend. His torture chamber was in a room downstairs. His girlfriend never went down there. She didn't have a clue. But the mother, but he didn't want his mother knowing. So that may have been his motivation for hanging himself in prison. In looking at the tiny parts of the videos, recordings of his murders, I had nightmares. I mean, I couldn't sleep for days. The sadosexual enjoyment that this man got from murdering these women, the taunting, the mocking of these women, the brutality. He recorded these murders, and they didn't show much on the documentaries of these recordings, but investigators talk about how he brutally beat these women. Afterwards, they had found blood from quite a few other people in the basement, in this room where he was killing these beautiful, innocent African-American women. So he was very violent, very sadistic. To see that side of humanity is terrifying. Many times, jurors are traumatized when they have to look at these videos. So I don't regret him being dead on the one hand, but then on the other hand, I believe only perhaps like 9, 10, 11 of the ladies' bodies was ever found. And they do believe that he killed 17 or more women. And he had said that he would tell where more of the bodies were. So there's many, possibly other bodies that were never discovered and that may never be discovered because this man cowardly hung himself. Very, 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 in that sense, the investigators were very disappointed and sad, not sad that he hung himself, but sad that they're not going to be able to help families and find more of the victims. One interesting side note. I was on Wikipedia refreshing my brain about Maury Travis, and they said that someone who had lived in the home that was still owned by Maury Travis's mother, when they found out, they didn't know they were living in this home where all of these beautiful women had been murdered. They were like, well, I want out of the lease, I want my money back, I want out of here. And the mother, his mother, refused to give the money back, refused to break the lease, and it wasn't until she was confronted by some government housing agency that she then rescinded the lease on her home to the person who was leasing it and paid that person their money back. She wasn't going to do that initially. I thought that was an interesting side note. So I'm glad this man is dead. I'm horrified by what he's done. These ladies' lives mattered and were important and valuable, and he treated them worse than a predatory animal, because predatory animals don't behave like that. And unfortunately, he took the cowardly route and committed suicide. So anyway, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, make a comment, watch a commercial, recommend my videos to a friend. Do one or more of those things. Thank you. Best wishes.